Meeting. Good. Shall we have the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm David Levy, Chairman, and to my left is Betty Gibbs, not often to my left. And to my right is Steve Fossel, and the General Registrar is at the end, Dan Pence. Next to him is the Deputy Registrar, Nancy Davis. Next to her is the Deputy Registrar, Julie Brown. Okay, so we have, actually, it'd be nice if we have the people in the audience identify themselves starting here.
Well, John Vassar, Ward 1, Precinct 1, and Lynchburg Republican City Committee.
Thank you. Next,
I'm Roz Webb.
nice to see you.
Judy Farrell.
Nice to see you.
Carolyn Schraker.
Great to see you.
Jeff Rosner, Lynchburg Democratic Committee, authorized representative and voter protection liaison.
Nice to see you. Okay, we have an agenda that if you all have been lucky, has been handed out. Do we have a motion as to approval of the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. We have the minutes from the May 2nd meeting.
No,
No, excuse me, April 8th meeting, and we have two sets of minutes. The closed meeting minutes and the open meeting minutes. Do I hear any corrections on those?
we can as is.
Second, all in favor? Please, all, anyone opposed? Motion's passed unanimously. Announcements, Dan, do we have announcements?
I have some announcements as part of my registrar report, and I'll reserve them to them.
Okay, any summer meeting dates, should we say anything? Should we?
Yes,
I don't know.
we have
Okay,
June 13th and July 25th, I believe.
would be the meetings of the electoral board,
Correct.
June 13th and July 25th. Okay. And shall we go into the registrar's report?
Sure. Let me go ahead and put that on the screen for us. Okay, registrar's report for May 2nd, 2024. We'll have some statistical reports, budgetary reports, ongoing projects, and some announcements or recommendations from the registrar. First statistical report is registry counts by locality. You can see on the chart here by precinct what the count of our active voters, inactive voters, summary of the inactive and active, and also a breakout of military overseas and federal. Summary at the bottom is we have 50,408 active voters, 6,470 inactive voters, and 56,878 total voters in Lynchburg as of 4/30/2024. Any questions on that slide?
To see voters.
Just
Sure.
a comment, looking at these numbers of active voters, I think we're probably going to need to get our heads together and move some precinct lines, because we're looking at 401
Yeah.
versus 402. I think 5,000 is the point where we need to make some changes for the sake of the size of the precinct.
Well,
Yes, actually, and I have in my notes that both 401 and 201, we should be looking at potentially moving the line as another, maybe we can think about that in another meeting. The reason for that is because of what's in the next report, which is the uptick. So you look, this is locality statistics for the months of April.
Dan, before we move
Yeah.
to the next. one,
Sure.
Just as to the adjustment of the boundaries, wouldn't, wouldn't it be advisable to wait until the November election?
Yes, I'm not suggesting we do it now. No,
Okay,
and we
base
may,
it on those numbers.
yeah, and we may, like I said, I think we should start reviewing it as the board and registrar as to what we need to do here. But these numbers are, I mean, the rule is active voters, and we've just crossed that line essentially in 401. I think it's too close to, our immediate election to do anything about that. But we should definitely talk about whether we need to do something for one of these for November, or if we can hold off. That's something we should definitely think
Well,
about.
I'm actually saying I think it's probably wise to hold off until after the November election.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that's within your purview to kind of talk that through.
Won't have a March election next year, so that would be a good time to deal with this. I just think we need to be looking at it and making plans, considering the amount of lead time we need to make precinct changes.
It's very disorienting.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The law specifically states that the trigger for changing the precinct lines is when you have 4,000 voters in a presidential election.
That's why.
And so-
November is critical.
Yes. So you have to wait until November, but then look at who made the 4,000 registered voters and voted in that presidential.
Exactly.
So
That was behind my statement. Fact as well. Good. Okay.
Yeah, and so just to continue that a little bit, my observation is, one of the things about this report, it helps us to track a little bit what's taking place in each precinct, in terms of net up, net down, right? So that's why we added this report to the list of reports. Looking back a couple of reports, my comment is, let me see if I get my mouse over there. Well, anyway, if you look down on 201 and go all the way across, you'll see that I have net 21 up. And that's been the same kind of uptick over the last couple of these reports. And the same thing is true on 401, we're net up 34. And that's also been a consistent pattern. Some of the other precincts you'll see, they'll be down a few, they'll be up a few. But these two precincts, seem to be consistently moving in that direction, which I think is not shocking if you look at how some of the developments in the town are continuing to be expanded. Certainly down in the fourth ward, we have some more development. So I think, it's not, in other words, if you were hoping that it was going to kind of tick back the other direction, I think for these two precincts, it's not likely to decrease. It's more likely to continue to increase. Okay, any other comments or thoughts on that before we leave that? All right. This is the statistical report for National Voter Registration Act, and essentially nothing really surprising here. We have, as always, the DMV kind of weighing in with the most number of registrations, since that's now a opt-out versus an opt-in. And the total is probably, what we'd expect for this month. We're not quite on, in a primary election, you don't have as many people focused on elections. I imagine that as we get closer to November, we'll start to see more people beyond just the regular DMV traffic actually submit applications and from other sources. Any questions on that before we move on? Okay, this is the budget report. And I'm going to say just at the outset that there's a couple of things happening that will kind of alter some of our numbers, probably for the next report. I just had a session with the finance department, and they're interested in kind of normalizing some of where we have aligned some of our expenses. And so, for example, you see down at the bottom there, software purchases. There's not much, this is in the registrar's area. I'm just going to page down for a second, down into the electoral board section of this. We don't really capture that. So, and a lot of things go into miscellaneous contractual services. So you'll see, for example, on this page at the bottom, toward the right-hand side there, we're actually well overspent in miscellaneous contractual services, but talking to finance department, they feel like we should maybe be a little more specific than just a kind of a general miscellaneous contractual service. So we'll align that, and that will, for this year's budget, unless we make changes to the budget, the percentage numbers are going to be a little funky. But what we're hoping to do is to use our exercise of cleaning up where we put our expenses into actually doing our budget, properly aligning our budget against where we're going to do the expenses for fiscal 2025, starting in July. So that's the plan. Is there anything specific within these, within this budget that you'd like to talk about beyond what I've just said there?
Dan, a couple of questions. One is, are you saying that this board will be reviewing a budget to adopt in our next meeting? Or where you stay?
So we've actually already submitted
Right,
our budget for fiscal 2025.
right.
And probably because it's more of an administrative thing than a thing you have to dig into, a level of detail, I would probably work with the finance department to figure out how we line up the budget. If you would like to, view that before we, I have to pull the trigger on that, I'm happy to have you guys look at that and review that. That's fine.
I think that would be useful to me, but also what would be useful is to get this budget report about the day before the meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
That's,
Yeah, that's possible. Sure, I can do that. Let's make a note. And I can generate this pretty much on demand, so that's not difficult. It is in flux. So, for example, the meeting I had with finance today, none of that's going to show in here, and it's going to take them a little while to kind of readjust where we with some of the expenses. So,
Let me ask you one
sure.
quick question. I was looking at this, bottom of page 2.
Yep.
3,300 and 3,900. Based on the numbers versus what's in the adopted budget, I'm assuming that all of our election officers are getting paid out of miscellaneous contractual services when they've been budgeted into temporary personnel services.
Actually, if you look at the year-to-date transactions column, which is just to the third one from the rightmost,
right.
you'll see we've actually spent $50,241.89 on temporary personnel services, and that is within the electoral board's part of the budget, and that actually leaves us $3,658 left in that budget. So we budgeted $53,900, which I'm sure was based on a previous year, and we've spent $50,000 basically change of that. Now, remember, one of the things that's may or may not have been considered when the budget for 2024 was put together was that we do have 3 elections this year. We didn't know for sure we were going to have an election in June until we actually got the notice from elect, right? Like the official election, we're doing primary, but that is possible that wouldn't have happened depending on the circumstances in the political realm. So, we're going to end up, I think, spending probably more than our budget on temporary personnel services and it's allocated, once we get to
Does
this.
this factor in what the state is reimbursing us for the presidential?
So the way that works, for better or worse, is, no.
It's not yet factored in, so
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't get factored in this document, so what they do is,
Well,
yeah,
it isn't reversed out of our spending at some point.
no, we simply make an additional budget request to the city for the amount that we believe we're gonna spend, which I did, and actually, if you remember in the last meeting, I reported two numbers. One was a number that I submitted to the city estimating. The second was actually the actual after the March election. And I was very happy to see they were pretty close, so I felt good about that. But what happens is the state will reimburse, but the city has already put the money into our budget.
Right, and they'll change the budget on it.
And well,
They should.
they should. They should. So I will ask that question as to how they actually showed that in there, but I'm not sure if they, what they do exactly. Remember, the third quarter budget hasn't gone in yet.
and I appreciate this information, but my original question was, is this an example where it was budgeted in one area and taken out of a different area? Because the budget in 3,300 is 53,900. The year-to-date transactions, I was looking at this
Right.
budget year-to-date
Right.
transactions.
That's
Right.
what he's saying.
So that next to the last column is mislabeled as far as I'm concerned. That should be how much you got left.
Well, I think the next to last column is how much you got left, right?
That's not how it's labeled, so that's why I'm saying it's a mislabeled column.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes, but, so the amount that we've spent is in the third from last.
Right, the amount we spent from the third to last column.
Okay, so we spent a whole lot more. So we spent 104,000 on personnel and miscellaneous, temporary personnel, miscellaneous contractual services. You don't happen to have off the top, how much of that was actual election officer?
Well, the temporary personal services, that is where, when we put that into work, we put it against that code. So that is definitely election officer, by the way, and also early voting. So one of the dilemmas that people don't realize is, since we now have 45 days of early voting, that means that we have to staff early voting in the office. So that's actually, I don't know, Julie, maybe, is that like as much or more? Do you remember if it's, I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't remember either.
I don't remember it exactly
Is-
either,
is-
but you also have to keep in mind that, I mean, I don't know if I can give a rough number of like how much election officials was, but we've already had to do that twice.
Well, starting
It's
March,
unusual because we did November and March, and then we're gonna have to pay June as well. So we had to pay the bump for election day, which also includes training and all of
Yeah.
that. So that's already been done twice in years. So that's one of the reasons why I so high, is because that's a very large sum.
Well, I'm not worried about how close we've spent to what was in budget for 3,300. Just trying to figure out why we were 42,000 over on miscellaneous contractual services.
Well, that, by the way, that's also for me. So one of the things when I first came in, I started asking the finance department was, it seemed like, the history was, there was a lot of things that went to miscellaneous contractual services. And I felt a little funny about that, but that's kind of seemed like the pattern. So I asked them at the time, shouldn't this be broken out a little more granularly? Because it seems like that's a big bucket and there's a lot of stuff going into that bucket. And finally, I actually got them to agree with me. So that's why they're gonna create some additional buckets, so you have a little more transparency as to, okay, is this miscellaneous contractual services for, this coding of the elections or for, the specific pieces that it actually shows. So that, once they put those codes into the list here and we do the journaling of the transactions, we'll get a lot more granularity as to where exactly that goes. And that's actually what I'm really hoping we do, a decent job at, so we can now look at 2025 and say, okay, budget-wise, where should we be putting our money and where, like there's some places we spent, what was it? We spent only 7% of our budget. Well, clearly that money shouldn't be in that part of the budget, right? I think it's formed as stationary for electoral board, right? But really, that probably a chunk, most of that money is going to be for ballots. And I think previously in the previous times, they just went ahead and treated ballots as if it's formed in stationery, which is not, I mean, that's not wrong, but it's also, not as specific as you might want it to be, right? So, by the way, so I'm looking up in a previous report, looks like we spent $10,000, $688 on early voting temporary staff in this last election. So that just gives you an idea about, where some of that money is. And that's just, early voting. So we're going to be doing early voting again, 45 days. And so there's going to be some, hopefully a little less, but similarly equivalent kind of money that we're going to spend on early voting.
How much did you say? That was for, you said the early voting staff,
Staff.
how much was?
10,600. And this, I'm just pulling this out of my last month's report. So it's off of this, if you,
Oh,
right? So you can look at this. I mean, the total cost for the election last time, we came up with about 70,000, just over $70,000. And that seems like that's probably, about right. For if you look at the offices of election in that election, the total cost for that was about $24,840. So that is the election officer day of election cost. And that's in my last month's report, so. So that goes to explain a little bit as to why we are where we are with, with the budget on where you were at page 2, right? Let me go to page 2. Right, that was your question down here about temporary personnel.
Yeah, I was just curious about that, just as a, for instance, of something that you were talking about. And, I understand where you're coming from with it, and I will be happy when accounting gives you the buckets that you need in order to keep it accurate track of exactly what kinds of expenses we've got, rather than just a large miscellaneous bucket.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are what they are, but it's, I've always felt a little bit funny just throwing things into a miscellaneous bucket. My feeling is miscellaneous should be a very small bucket, and if you have bigger stuff, you should be putting more specifics, but it looks like they're gonna help me on that at this point.
Okay, good, thank you.
Other questions on the budget that you want to talk about? Like I said, the third quarter request has not gone in yet, so that hasn't shown. So I do expect what you're saying, Mr. Levy, that the left-hand column should adjust to account for what they approve as the third quarter budget.
Okay.
Okay, other questions on this? All right, statistical turnout for dual primary. So we're looking at how do we estimate our ballots for this coming primary? And I think you guys have seen this data already, but we're just sharing it out here. This is going back to 2017 was our last comparable election where we had both a Democrat and Republican primary. Essentially, what I decided to do was take 3 times, order ballots for 3 times the number of turnout on each side. So you've seen that ballot order. I don't think I have it in this deck, but you've seen that. Oh, yes, I did. Okay. But essentially, this shows you the turnout we had per precinct in the last similar election. Any questions on that?
So we're taking the same approach we did the last primary of essentially 2 orders.
Yes, so the ballot vendor that we're working with really has broken out their order paradigm into 2 orders. The absentee, which is your early voting set of ballots, and then your election day ballots. And they've done pretty well. They've told me in this election, they really expect a very short turnaround time from order to delivery. So, I mean, they've said it could go as little as 48 hours now. I'm relying on that, but that's what. So they feel very confident that the number of ballots they have to print for this election, they're comfortable. So my plan right now is to do, I did the initial ballot order, as you know. We've actually checked that order in, so we actually have in hand everything in the early voting R column and the early voting D column. So we have 13,400 ballots across the whole jurisdiction for early voting for Republicans and 10,000 for Democrats. It breaks out like you see there. What my strategy would be, like you said, again, is to get partway through early voting, have a look at what it looks like the turnout really is, and then make a second order based on that. Now, I have projected what that order is going to be for election day, just based on the overall numbers you saw on the last slide. But I think we'll be reviewing it, right? So this is this column, what projected ED ballot or R, I projected ED ballot or D. Those two columns will adjust depending on what happens in early voting. And I will, before we get to that point of actually making that order, probably mid-May, maybe third week of May, I'll come back to you with some numbers and say, this is what we've used, this is what we have left, just like I did last time. All right? Good. Okay, let's get a page of that.
So you anticipate you'll have a lot more, well, basically, this is just how many you're going to order for early voting, and whatever you don't need, you transition into election day ballots?
Yeah, so because the early voting ballots and the election day ballots are the same ballots. Remember, now that we're doing the absentee through a vendor,
Correct.
all of that, essentially that's a whole other set of ballots that we don't have to worry about with this, right? That's a separate ballot order, if you will, but it really, it's a packet. So
Approximately 2,000, give or take.
yeah, so it was, I think 1,700, 1,500 on the D side and like 500 on the R side. So it's approximately that. Those files have gone out to the vendor, and they'll go ahead and, execute. I've been talking to them, they'll execute on that probably tomorrow or Saturday at the latest to go out the door to the state. But essentially, we're buying packets from them. So that includes the ballot, that includes all the turnout. So that, is completely separate from this whole exercise.
Okay. But basically, you have already ordered the early voting ballot ordered, and what you're going to determine after you see how early voting is going, how many project election day ballots to order,
Correct.
if any more.
Yeah, and I do expect we'll need some more. I mean, like I said, I kind of estimated a total order up front, which is the column for calculated ballot order for R's and D's. That's based on the percentages and turnout in previous elections. Like I said, I actually did a ×3 just to make sure we had extra. But, and I'll look at that, question of ×3 turnout. Again, like for example, we may get some races that are more heavily contested, right? So I may look at, early voting, say for example, in Ward 4, where we have, a little more of a contested race, if that's the case. And that may turn out that we're bumping those numbers up by more.
I guess the one piece of information that would be helpful
Okay,
is, looking at the total percentage of voters for 2017. I would be curious what the total percentage about the number of ballots are, what percentage of voters this number of ballots would cover.
I mean, it's a 1-for-1, right? So, right, so for example, if I've ordered early voting ballots for first ward, first precinct, right, 101, essentially I have 1,100 ballots, and I would service 1,100 voters. Right?
Well, no, I understand that, but what percentage of that 1,100 voters, what percentage of total voters is that?
So if you look, I'll go back to the previous slide, right?
You look back at the sheet on total.
So, for example, for 101, my total registration is 4,304, right? So my turnout for the Dems in the last, similar election was 314 Dems and 456 Republicans. So in terms of ordering ballots, I've gone ahead and ordered 1,100 so far ballots out of, I'm estimating maybe 1,400 I would totally need just to be times 3 of the turnout. Does that make sense?
I think he's looking for a percentage of the.
Yeah, I'm-
The current, like the
Yeah, I'm
current.
seeing a total percentage over here on the end column. I don't see a total percentage in here of estimated. In other words, what percentage of the voters in that precinct do all of these ordered ballots equal? In other words, if we know that we're gonna run 18% in Ward 1, do we have enough ballots to cover 36%?
Yes.
54%?
That's 3 times 3.
So it'd be 54, so we have ballots.
So what I did was on this slide, if I had 314, I said, okay, if I multiply that by 3 times, I'm gonna get 900 ballots. I think I have on that next slide, under D, sorry, it's not in the same order, I have 1,000 ballots. Do you see where I'm at over there? So I'm sorry, the columns don't match the previous slide, so apologies about that. But
Yeah.
in other words, 101, if I had 314 turnout Dem, 101, I said, okay, I'm gonna multiply that number by 3, right? So I have 3 times the amount that I need, potentially, possibly. And then that turns into an order of 1,000 ballots. And of those 1,000, I've gone ahead and ordered 800. And the reason I've only ordered 800 is because I might end up, instead of ordering 200 more, I might end up ordering 400 more, or I might end up ordering, I kind of did 75% of what I think I'm totally gonna need. Just in case for something
Okay,
really going to,
For example, in 102, you had about 30% of the registered voters show up in 2017.
Yep,
So
for which,
102,
but which, election?
back up a page.
Yeah, which election?
Total percentage on the end for 102
2017.
is about 30%. So for this year, you're ordering enough ballots to cover 90% of the people in that precinct.
So I'm doing it by election, right? So I don't look, the 29% is just kind of for the big picture, but it doesn't matter. The big number doesn't matter, except that you need to make sure that the 2 numbers add up, right, to something. So
That's what
I'm ordering,
That's where Doc is going, is trying to do a big number. And really, you're going more granular by the precinct.
Yeah, I mean,
Party.
let me just tell you where I am.
yeah, sure.
Back when we had that special election in 2016,
Yep.
we came up short.
Yep.
So, I'm just trying to see what the percentages are for the precinct, since we have to do it by precinct. That's why I'm asking about precinct. We can't just.
Right. We have to do it by precinct
Right.
and election,
Right.
right? Has to be
So
by Republican
So-
and
so
Democrat.
I'm just trying to figure out what the percentages is, just to make sure we have significantly more ballots ordered than
I
the
think
number
he's-
that showed up. And I think you've answered that by saying you ordered 3 times as much. And if we get 3 times the results, then I think we're okay. I was just trying to make sure that I understood that. You probably said 3 times earlier. I just didn't pick it up in this context.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry, between the 2 slides, I mean, I'm trying to make this a lot of numbers and trying to make it as simple as I can with a lot of numbers.
Well,
Okay.
Actually,
Not-
we
not-
do magic
not-
wand,
not a
see
problem.
fingers and
I'm- I'm
they're not right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, even with this, you are hoping.
yeah, we can go on.
Can we move on?
Yeah. And I'm happy to go through this in more detail if you want, just, because I want everybody to be comfortable what we're
You
doing.
can do it individually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll
I
have
didn't
another
realize- I didn't
chance.
realize it was going to take that long to answer that
That's fine.
question.
You'll have another chance to have your input on this for sure. So. Okay, ongoing projects. So update security in the registrar's office. This is about the grant. I did pester poor Piper, who's the one who's been fronting this for us. She told me that we are still waiting on the, I guess I have the slide down here. I'll just skip down real quickly. We are still under the EHP review. EHP stands for Environmental, Historical, and Preservation Review, which is done by FEMA, which makes sure that we're not doing any damage to our historical building. I think that's what they're after. Anyway, this is the process it's happening, right? This is all the stages. And that's the first bullet there. It all has to be done by July of 2025. So I've given them work windows. I've told them they cannot do any work in the office during early voting for this election or for the next election, or even for the, potentially for the primary in 2025. So they've been told when they can do this. Hopefully they get it all done before, without blowing up our elections. Okay, separation of duties document, still want to have this document. We haven't done much on this. I know it's just sitting in there, but I will try and get a draft together for you at some point so you guys can review it and we can figure out how we do whatever we do. Relocation of precinct 204. This is approved. We're staged for this. I guess the latest on this is I just literally before I walked into the meeting here, got an email back from BMS, and I've got all of the PDFs that they need for this. And so they're going to send this out. Well, I think I gave them a deadline by middle of May. Yeah, I think that's right. But we may try and move that sooner. But anyway, can't move it too much sooner, I think. Anyway, that's what's next stage is they have to send it out. Everything's taken care of with elect and with AG, with the city. Page program, we're actually going to hold up on this until beginning of the new year. Every time you have a new year, you have different people you might be interacting with in terms of history classes, and whatever teachers might be willing to do with their students. So we're going to
Beginning of the school year.
school
you're
year,
saying?
yes,
Okay.
correct. Beginning of the new school year. Sorry, I did have that on.
Let me just suggest that you contact them during the summer because they write up their syllabi and they know what their plan is when they start school. So if we come in then, they may already have set it up in a way that makes it too late for us to be involved in that.
Okay.
So I would at least give them a heads up if there's an option there and make sure that whoever they have as their government teachers are aware of it so that they can factor it in when they're planning for their fall semester.
Julie, you had to weigh in on that?
Yeah, so that was already my plan. I've attempted to reach out to a few people, as well as just haven't really heard back, so that's why we're deciding to pause right now because we're ending the school year. So I have a list of contacts and everything pre-planned, ready to go, to email and recall them, in kind of like July, even August, as well as communication for all of the principals, and I have a connection with the university schools that does a lot of engagement, and I plan on copying her on that as well to hopefully push that momentum. We decided to kind of put a pause on it because I haven't been able to really get a lot back. So I did full on go, but I dipped my toes in, but it is in this year. So we're going to do it in July, August.
My worry is they may not actually know who some of the teachers are until we get closer to the fall. I don't know. So that may be what's slowing Julie down. Maybe people aren't responding to her because they're not sure if they're getting the spot.
It's kind of a
Catch-22.
catch-22.
Yeah.
You need to get to them
Before they do
before the
too
planning
much,
starts. But-
and you may not know who they are until we get further along. So.
And are we doing private schools as well as public?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, less program, that was closed out the end of, beginning of May. You guys all, put your stuff in the last, your approval in at the last meeting, and I submitted that pretty much right after that, so that's all closed up. Backup precinct review and approval. As you know, we're still kind of sorting through the item down below here, precinct agreements. So that, I think, waits a little bit on that because we are going to be needing to think about what we do with the backup precincts based on what we're doing with the precincts. Also, as you can see on the right-hand side there, one of the things that I'm working with AEP on is trying not to have a backup precinct that's on the same power circuit as the primary. Because if the primary goes down and you say, oh, we're going to move over to the backup, oh, wait, power's off the backup too. So we're trying to make sure we differentiate that. It's a little bit complicated, I think. I shared with some of the board members some of the reasons why it's not, like with wards and precincts, you have boundary lines that follow streets pretty cleanly. But when it comes to AEP, it's like spaghetti, it's like fingers. It's not like I can say, oh, if I just draw a line around these 6 streets, that's all one circuit. It doesn't work like that. It's, like I said, it's like a spider web or, yeah, so yeah, exactly. It's like fingers sticking into different neighborhoods. And so it's not that easy to say, oh, well, I just draw a line here. Well, you actually might have 4 different circuits there. But whether or not, oh, is this on this particular church, or is this one in this church, or this school? So it's a little bit convoluted. So it's gonna take a little bit of kind of peeling back on this stuff. Anyway, so that's still ongoing. We also have, as the next item, an ongoing upgrade of ballot scanning equipment. So we actually have a proposal in from the vendor, and we've actually submitted this budget request to the city council. Finance originally told me that this would have to be a separate budget request, but we got lucky in a way that the city council has been stalling on their third quarter budget request. So they said, well, just throw it all in together. So if that happens, then maybe we'll get through it without the same level of scrutiny, although who knows. I don't know whether or not one or more of us might need to go before the city council and advocate for this, but I will definitely keep my ear to the ground on that and keep you aware if we need to think about showing up for a city council meeting. We won't, I don't know that we'll be on the agenda because, I don't know, we'll see. I'll talk to them again and find out if there's anything that we should be doing in order to make sure that this gets through. And by the way, if they decide not to do it, then they'll just be paying a higher price, right? So that's our argument. Our argument is do it now and save yourself $20,000 some dollars, or do it later and pay the extra money. Signage upgrade. I know we had a conversation in the last board meeting about signage. I have a slide here. We'll talk about a little bit some of the options. Signs. Precinct agreements. Obviously, that's a hot topic. We're working on that now, starting with St. Paul's, and obviously that will flow out to other privately owned precincts once we close that up. And also in parallel, we're doing the MOU with the city, which basically is, aligns with or joins to the precinct agreement to allow us to have that relationship that the city will want in order to provide insurance coverage to privately held precincts. Any questions on this?
Good.
Okay. This basically is just about the ballot scanner upgrade. Like I mentioned before, the third quarter budget amendment's been submitted to City Council. It includes a request for $143,200 for money for the new road scanners. And we're going to try and save $21,000 by getting this into order, essentially into the vendor. We don't have to take delivery of it that quickly, but we'll get the order into the vendor by July 1, and we will capture that price improvement. So I don't think we have to have anything beyond this budget amendment at this point, but we will need to have them. Hopefully they get the budget amendment, the third quarter budget amendment approved before July 1. If they don't, that could pose a problem. So hopefully they get that done, but we'll keep an eye on that. All right. Sign upgrade cost estimates. So we have some examples of some signs that we've been looking at to improve. The one sign I don't have on here because I don't actually have a template is the one that Jeff was asking for. The top one there is register office parking, and we decided to go with election office parking, limiting the word customer. I know you suggested the word customer because it actually gets used for not just for customers but for other people as well. So that shortens it a little bit and still keeps. I think the word election was critical to kind of make sure people understand that it's not just registration, it's also election. So we wanted to make sure that we had that in there. That's actually the cheapest of the signs. So it looks like you're only going to charge us about $16 per sign. And that's total cost is $81, which is shockingly low to me, but it's great. I'm happy with that. And we haven't, pulled the trigger on that order because I wanted to put that in front of the board, but that's, one signage that we have under consideration. The other signs, of course, were more for election day and for making sure voters get to the right spot. So we have researched some feather signs. These are tall signs. They're tall signs. You see them on the right there, about here. We were looking at them possibly just to mark the entrance to a precinct or make sure people get to the right spot when they're coming into a precinct. They're $177 a piece, so if we did 18 of them, that cost me about $3,000 and change. We also think we need some more vote arrow signs, because the arrow signs, seems like we have some vote here signs, but maybe more without the arrow. We feel like we need to beef up the arrow in order to get people to the right spot, because vote here, but you're not really voting here, you're really voting, a little down the parking lot there. So we wanted to add some vote signs. Those aren't too expensive, but if we did, enough to really place them around, we could be anywhere up to maybe $1,000 to do those. Also, voter parking signs. This is something we don't really have now. We just have kind of vote here and some vote arrow signs. So we think we would want to add some voter parking signs, but that at least gets them to the place where they're supposed to park. One of the problems I think we had last time is people were parking over here. They really have to go to the precinct over here. Some of the places they're used to parking farther away, and it takes them quite a while to get there. So with voter parking signs and some vote signs, we hope to get them parking closer to the actual spot that they're supposed to vote. And that might be especially important in cases like St. Paul's, right? St. Paul's situation where we have people parking up here, but they really have to come down here to vote. So this would help that.
Since these signs are going to be put, if they go out on Monday, I was just thinking maybe you could just say voter parking only, but if they go out on Monday, people might think they can't park there on Monday. So
So we're sending these with the
are they
chiefs.
they going with the technicians, or they going with the
They
chiefs?
want to know.
They put them in the middle.
2 in the
Middle of
morning
the
on
night.
Tuesdays.
Yeah, they're doing it early in the morning on Tuesday. Now, look, the other possibility is, I don't know if we can get election day voter parking signs. That's another possibility. I think the sign that we pulled up from on a print elect, somebody did this, that's how it was. But it's possible we could get another variation of that thing. But I do think that elected technicians, they get up early in the morning, like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they go around, and they go to every precinct and stick the signs in the ground, so.
Okay, well, if that's the case, the voter parking only would give you bigger letters and better able to read than having to get rid of the other 2 days. Because they're gonna come, get pulled up.
They go back around, and last time we had people to help unload chief's cars, so they were able to go out before like 2 and pick them up. They were very happy about it,
They got
Yeah.
them all.
because normally they're up like 24 hours doing
Yeah.
this, so they were happy to get that done.
So do we need to vote on any of these expenditures, or have we decided?
Well, I mean, that's up to you to
Expenditures?
decide how you want to do it. I just want to make sure you knew what the number was, right? Obviously, we're all looking at the budget, making sure we're, aware of what we're spending.
We need to, I think we need to see how many of each sign we need.
Yeah.
And
So, yeah, so I just gave a big number, so my assumption was, put the big number out there, and then if we decide we need a little less than that, that's fine. You're spending less money than you might have spent, but if I tell you, if you say, oh, I'm gonna do 30 signs, and we decide we need 90, all of a sudden that number gets
Yeah.
bigger, so I'd rather start with a big number, and then you can
Are
move
we
back.
planning to have something in place for the June 18th?
I mean, I can order, I can walk out of this meeting and go order signs, if we feel like that's the
I
right thing
think
to
we're
do.
getting short on time. And that's, we've got to see how to get there.
how,
Okay, so now we know what our options are. Photos of our precinct.
how quickly can we get turnaround on this?
I don't know, Print Elect is gonna do this, what, probably 2 weeks, maybe? I think that's 3 weeks.
2-week turnaround?
You think it's more than 2 weeks? You
No,
think?
I would say like, because there's a couple different companies on here, so depending on what you want. And like, at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, so let's just say we leave 3 weeks, right? Let's just say that we would really want to have you in at least 3 weeks before we have to have the signs.
I don't think we need a general board decision. on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, if you guys want to say I'm happy to delegate this, I'm fine with that. I
I
just
think
want to
we
make sure
should
you
send
know what
out
we're talking about.
suggestions, we should send you suggestions as to what we think, especially as to particular precincts.
Yeah, I think it might be good if the board member talked to each of their 6 precinct chiefs to figure out what signs we need and where we need to put them, and whether we need an arrow or just a vote here, a big vote here sign, and get that information to you sometime in the next 2 weeks. That'll
Sure,
give you time
that's
to
fine.
order and get them in. And personally, I don't want the tube man. The feather I can handle.
Okay, that's fine. I thought the two man was cute, but I know not everyone's gonna be a fan of the two.
Upsets the dogs. It upsets the
And you
dogs.
have to have electricity to make it stand up.
Well, yeah, you have to get the blower. There's a blower that goes with it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd say, which is in Chicago.
All right, okay, we're getting rid of the two man. Sorry, I thought that was a cute idea.
Oh, you don't have to get rid of him, he just said he was.
Moving right along.
So we've actually sat down and looked at maybe where we think some signs should be. So we actually have done a little bit of preliminary. So if you want, we'll send you that preliminary.
Yeah, why don't you?
Yeah.
That would grease the process.
And my main concern is I want you to understand how much this costs. Right? That was really what I was striving for.
Yes.
That's excellent.
Is to make sure you know what you're buying into. That's all.
Now, what's are these vote signs the same size as candidates' yard signs?
Yeah, these are the vote signs are 12 by 18. And election day voter parking also is 12 by 18. It's a standard,
Which is considerably bigger than the voter signs we've been using.
I don't think so. No, I think that's the
Same
same
size?
size, yeah.
Okay.
But Julie had one.
Our slight thought process after deep diving a little bit is it was more cost effective to buy more signs and strategically place them than get rid of the giant signs. So that's why I also gave an alternative to the feather banner, because we can put that at a strategic place and it was more cost effective than
Makes
trying to
sense.
order a sign.
Yeah, for example, we didn't put any sandwich board signs on here. And the reason is because the sandwich board signs are actually much more expensive just for the plastic sandwich. We have some at the office. We do use them for early voting, but they're much more expensive. And then you have to get the sign on top of that, right? So.
And they're very
it's-
cumbersome.
And they're very cumbersome, so,
And they blow over.
and so that we felt like even though, they were bigger, they may not have the advantages that we want, so that's why we didn't really include this.
Okay, shall we move on?
Sure. Security rate update, you've actually already seen this, and so I'll just go on to my announcements. Just a reminder for everyone that precinct 204 is moving from Fairview Christian Church to Bass Elementary School. I had an interview with WABC this morning, which I made sure I mentioned this as well. I don't know how many people are watching that station, but anyway, go over that so people will know. And mention it's a dual primary. First day of early voting starts May 3rd. That's tomorrow. We'll be open 9 to 5 for that. And also 9 to 5 2 Saturdays before Election Day. You guys are going to decide, I believe, some training dates, or at least work through that today, for election officers and chiefs and assistant chiefs. And I think you've already said that you're okay with us being closed on Memorial Day. So if that's the case, we're going to be closed on Memorial Day, even though it's during early voting, the city will be closed, and so we'll be closed as well. June 19th holiday, I believe you also decided for the June 19th holiday that we're going to close for the holiday, or what did we decide? Look at the.
I think the registrar's office is going to be closed on June 19th, but I believe we're required to start canvass on the 19th, and we will need at least one Veris authorized person to help us with that, I believe.
Okay, is that right? Is that how you decided this? Okay, all right, fine. Okay, so we'll be closed to the public, but we will continue canvas. And for those attending canvas. Capture processing tentatively planned to be in the week of June 10th. Just so people are aware, and we will be lining up our, we've got cap team tentatively lined up, and we'll be rounding that out shortly. Okay, that's all I had on this front.
Good. Thank you, David.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Shall we move to old business? Any old business? Okay, let's move to new business, and the first item is election of new election officers. We have a list of potential new election officers. Next, please.
All right, I make a motion that we appoint these 9 people whose applications we've received.
I second.
Third.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is passed. Those are elected.
Appoint.
Now, we get to the memorandum of understanding, and that's coupled with item C, the revised contract for precincts on private property. We've been faced with the challenge of a slip and fall incident at St. Paul's that occurred in the last election. And that raised interesting issues about liability and whose responsibility it was. And it's also drawn to our attention that we really do need agreements with all our precincts as to especially the non-public property ones. So we need a polling place agreement. We simultaneously, the city had been negotiating a memorandum of understanding about issues like personnel management and the registrar's office and a number of other very governmental kinds of things. It became evident that we needed at root to have this memorandum of agreement, understanding, identify the city as the one that is acting with the polling places. That's their responsibility by law. And we are their agent in that respect. But we are not the ones who contract solely with the polling places. So the purpose of these 2 documents is to give us a basis for what we need to do, which is to have an agreement with our polling places and a memorandum of understanding with the city as to who does what. We've engaged in a lot of serious negotiation. Dan has an attorney, paid for by the state, I believe, no? And I've negotiated with the city attorney, assistant attorney, Matt Friedman, and we've come up with the documents that are now being presented to the board to adopt. We have had a last minute, literally last minute, series of questions posed by St. Paul's, who are most interested in this. And they have proposed some alternative language for 3 or 4 provisions in the agreement that do not seem to be actually very different than the language they are proposed to replace. I've had a very preliminary discussion with Matt Friedman about that very preliminary discussion about this. What my suggestion is that this memorandum of understanding and this polling place agreement, facility agreement, be adopted by the board as something that I would be authorized to enter in with the other 2 parties, subject to ratification by the board at our next meeting. And that way we would have the final negotiation that I would be party to and sign on and then bring back to the board to authorize. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. You're gonna, basically, you're gonna work out the rough spots, make it smooth and bring it back because you have I think, fairly good understanding of what the concerns are that need to be looked at. And as I mentioned earlier before the meeting started, I think that at least these first couple of concerns are things that I had already mentioned to you about how clear the language is. Right now, I think the only thing we're looking at is getting the language clear enough that everybody understands what they're saying and not just someone with 3 years of law school.
That's the purpose of negotiating. Yes. So,
I'm fine with it.
So my question, just to jump in here, if you don't mind, this is all, at a high level, obviously, always want to get this done. The immediate goal from my perspective is to make sure that I don't have to do an emergency polling place change. So, what would we go back to St. Paul's with, and what kind of time frame would that be?
well, the fortunate aspect of what St. Paul sent us was they actually proposed very specific wording.
Yep.
And my sense of it is that it's not going to be difficult for me to talk with you and Matt Friedman to see if that wording is acceptable or if we need to tweak it a little bit. Not very difficult at all.
Yeah.
And so I would suggest that maybe tomorrow I'd be conferring with Matt and you.
Yep. Okay.
And then by the end of that discussion, have a document that we're prepared to sign with St. Paul.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And make it clear that it is subject to the ratification of the electoral board,
Yeah.
since we've had this last minute flurry.
Now, can we ratify this by email, having been through it as much as we've been through it and having read it, or do we have to actually have a meeting?
I think we should have an actual meeting, but my signing it on behalf of the board, subject to the ratification, I think we're in business.
Well, whatever it takes to have a precinct on primary day.
If we need to, we can do an emergency meeting. And
Okay,
we'd have to give notice even if we did it by email. That we will get by email.
Yeah, it's a meeting, you need to give
It's a
notice.
meeting. If we do a ratification by email, it's a meeting.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm understanding what you're saying, and I'm not arguing with what you're saying. I'm just curious if is it possible to ratify today with the proviso that certain things be added, and if not, then we have to meet. I'm just trying to, I don't mind coming in, I can come in anytime.
Well, I think it's pretty much of a unspecified ratification today, that there may be problems that we don't even see here that we want to reflect on before another meeting.
How soon do we need to come in and do that?
Well, I'm really visualizing that Dan and I and the city will present St. Paul's with essentially a signed document. And the only
That's fine.
loose end is that we'll bring it back to the board for full ratification. But by my signing it, it pretty much says we're in the ballpark.
Well, we've got,
And I'm asking for your empowerment of my signing it in that stance.
well, then we've got the situation where, are you signing something that we all agree to?
Well,
Because I don't know how it's going to be going.
I think what I'm asking for is that you agree to what's being presented today, subject to some last minute modifications, which will be brought back to the board, but you are authorizing me to sign it as presented today and subject to the ratifications, the other changes.
If the changes we're talking about are specifically noted as clarification of wording to create what we all think is going to be there. Because I know what I think it says, and if it's a case of clarifying the wording so that it says that to whoever reads it, then I'm all for that. And I have no problem with proceeding.
Well, how would you like to word a resolution today? motion today that gives me authorization to sign it on behalf of the board, subject to the receipt of final document to adopt at its next meeting. And we also have these polling place agreements that we're going to have to enter with all of our non-public polling places.
So I'm just trying to think through the wording and how to do that. Something to the effect of the board authorizes the chairman to enter into these agreements with an MOU that says basically what it says here, although with some clarification of language so that it says what we understand it to say. So basically it's, getting, I can approve this MOU and authorize you to work with the city attorney and the registrar to make the language more clear to say what it says.
I would put in the end that I would report back as to the final version.
Yes.
You said that in English. Also, are the suggested changes to the polling place agreement or the MOU?
There are changes to both.
So then I would make that motion that you to clarify language in both documents
And sign the
Right.
agreement.
and sign the agreement on behalf of the board, so long as the meaning doesn't change. All we're doing is clarifying language.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
And clarification is in the eye.
Well, just, I mean, well, I had the same questions that were in this email that came an hour before the meeting.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
My reading of that email was that you were right, that it's really just clarifications. They're not changing the substance of the agreement. And in fact, if anything, it's just putting the city board in a proper place to be responsible than us. It's really the city that these changes.
Yeah.
So that being said, did you get a wording from that last resolution?
I put that the motion was that you would be authorized to make changes on both of the documents as long as the meaning didn't change.
And sign it,
And
right?
and be authorized to sign on behalf of the electorate.
To make changes, to make clarifying changes in,
Clarify changes and authorized to sign
on behalf of,
as chairman on behalf of.
that works.
To report back to the board.
That works. And I presume that after you come up with the document that you're going to sign, you just send this copy prior to the next meeting. I know. That's one of those understood things. I don't need a lawyer to write that one.
So where's that ratification? Is that not required?
Read what you've got.
Well, I have, David Bodie is authorized to make clarifying changes on those documents as long as the meaning doesn't change and sign on behalf of the board. Then you report back to the board.
And that's all.
I'll second that. Did you make that motion?
I made that motion.
Okay.
There were a couple of words, but I'm not going to quit laughing. No, it's fine.
Okay, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No, the motion is passed. So that's item B and C. So shall we move on to item D, our election officer training for the June 18th primary? Those would be dates for the training.
So,
Any suggested dates?
I'm going to be gone. I'm unavailable
First week of what?
June. probably the last week of May. But I can do most any time on the next couple of weeks. I have had some election officers ask if they're going to have to train. I said, they need one set of training for the year, unless something comes up that is different than how they were trained, or we do training again. So I don't know that we need, unless there's going to be something different between the two primaries.
Yeah, it's very much the same primary. It's a dual primary, just like the last one. So
Yeah,
we've just had the training and people have just done the election. So I don't think, new election officers, I think my view is you got to get new election officers and you've got to get chiefs and assistant chiefs. They have to be there.
yeah. I would also suggest that we let any election officer know when the training is going to be and just tell them that they are perfectly welcome to
Sure.
come to review, even though they are not required since they've had prior training.
I would suggest that we do exactly that with the election officer training and aim for an early June date, maybe, or at end of May. And chief officer training.
Has to be within between 3 and 30 days prior to the election, so sometime in June. We normally have it the week before, and that's when we give them their list of people to call to come in as their officers.
Yeah, I think that's the time frame. So shall we leave it up to Dan and Julie and Nancy to come up with dates? Yeah. I don't think we're.
If you want to do that, that's fine. Just make sure I know you're available.
Or do you want to set particular dates right now?
Well, I am between May 26th, which is a Sunday, and June 6th, which is a Thursday. I am unavailable. That doesn't mean you can't have training, it's just I won't be there.
8/26.
June 6th.
June 6th.
Now, are we thinking about doing a super session for how many people? How many people do we have?
Just appointed 9. And I had 3 applications that were in my mailbox today, so that'd be 12. If they.
So is 12 too many for a super session?
No, we can do that. I think once you get to 20, okay, 15, Julie started looking with horror.
Yeah.
15, maybe 16.
12 is probably the upper end of what I think we can,
Yeah,
Probably,
12 is fine.
yeah, I mean, if we 1 or 2 over, we'd be fine, but, so we've got a super session group there, and do we want to wait until the 15th? Because that's the Saturday,
That's a little tight.
that's a little tight. You've got the 8th, but I can probably be back.
What is this for, chief training?
8th is a Saturday.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of things for super session.
Just remember, we've got an early voting on there that day, which is fine. It's just gonna be a busy day for you.
Yeah.
That's all.
Or you can do the first, I won't be there, which maybe you'll get through quicker, I don't know.
You have a suggestion?
I have suggestions. Pending feedback from last time, it might be easier if we have a larger group, we do election and then the hands-on. So they're only there for like an hour each instead of being there on a Saturday. That seemed to better, like,
Yes, you're
them
talking
absorb
about-
the information.
You're talking about the Chiefs
The,
now,
no, the new election.
the new one.
Does
Have
that
2 separate sessions and not a super session? I'm
Yeah,
fine with that too, but does that mean that they're coming to 2 sessions and they get paid twice as much?
No,
Up to you
no.
guys.
they'd only come to, each of them would come to 1 session.
Well, no, they have.
She's saying smaller sessions. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think you're talking about
My
content.
suggestion, instead of, we had, from my understanding, we had more people come when the lecture and the hands-on was separate compared to a super session.
But are
That's all in one
are
day.
you saying each
That's only
election
because we
officer should come
limited
to
the size.
2 sessions? The new ones. So do we pay them for 2 sessions?
I would say it's just
Get
one.
trained, get paid once for training. Also, the super sessions were smaller. That's why
Right,
we limited them.
Yeah.
That's why they were smaller,
Right.
because we limited how many.
which was good.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the space.
Because we could handle more people in the lectures than we could in the hands-on.
So what do we say?
Nothing. That I reported.
Well, if we had just decided that we do not want to do a super session, then I would say pick any 2 days, one for theory. If provided everybody can come, we might have to have 2 dates. One for the training and one for makeup. And then possibly have 2 dates for the hands-on, just so people can come in and spend time, because a lot of people,
Should we think about Saturday the 8th? And even though we have voting in the office, can you all spare some effort to help us with training?
I mean, we'll be pulling additional people in. Look, I'm sure I'll be running up and downstairs all day. That's fine. It's okay. We've done that before. It's not a big deal.
Do you want to aim for next week, the beginning of next week, the 10th, 11th, 12th?
of June, I would be here. Yeah, we do, we probably want to have chief training on like the 10th is Monday,
10th is
either Monday or Tuesday.
Do you want to try and do it in an evening session?
yes.
That's what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
okay.
Monday or Tuesday, either one of those I think would work. For me, I don't know.
The week of the 10th, I think.
I'm just gonna be real honest with all y'all, my birthday is the 11th. I will not be.
Okay,
Just to make that.
okay, we have our priorities. Well, okay, the 10th is Monday. Do you want to just say the 10th is going to be chief's training?
I think so,
Okay, the 10th is chief's training.
starting at 6.
Will people be able to get off work and get there at 6?
We don't know, we don't work.
Not hours.
You that works.
Okay, so that's Monday, June 10.
And that's chief training. Okay, so are you saying there's not gonna be a general
We
training?
talked about
Like it's a review?
There is.
Well, by law, they have the training that they need for the second to a primary. So,
So then we're just gonna go to the training.
so by law, we're required
it's not that sophisticated.
have a training for all of the new people. And I would offer to any of the veterans, if they would like to come for a review, they can come to that, not required, because they have successfully done their training. I guess we had February.
We've come up with the chief training.
Yes.
We're talking about a session for the new officers and anyone who want to refresh.
Just
Refreshing.
for the chief's training, it's 6 o'clock too early.
No.
Okay,
Just keep in mind, we can try to encourage everyone to attend the same one like we did last time, because I really like that. But if for some reason through the scheduling conflict, we need a backup date internally,
Well, do
Just in
we
case.
want to look at the fall of the 15th? That's the late day. Are you all open for voting on the
Yes.
15th?
yes. That's not for chiefs, because chiefs have to have their stuff, they're supposed to have called all the election officers by the 15th.
So the week before the 10th is what we're looking at.
So you're looking at the 8th? Well, if we're gonna have two sessions, I
The
mean,
8th is a Saturday.
well, going back to what Judy was saying, if she was saying that two shorter sessions gets the information embedded better than one super session. So Julie is suggesting that we have two sessions of the training of part A and part B, as opposed to the super session with A and B both at the same time.
How about the 4th and the 6th?
Um, I will be on the 6th, I will be on the road,
Yes,
but
we don't have a whole lot on the dates.
yes, I know. Like I said, I don't have to be there. There are plenty of competent people.
Fourth and sixth again.
There,
So like the fourth would be the lecture part and the sixth would be hands-on.
does that make sense?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. And starting at 6 again.
And Betty can be the presenter.
David will.
I will present the chair of the electoral board.
Okay, so Tuesday
Yes.
Hands on the second one. Lecture.
is lecture. And Tuesday, or Thursday,
This is really long, 3
6
days.
is, both days. Probably downstairs.
Yeah, we did, for the,
Probably not, if we have 12 people and we're inviting every single EO to possibly show up.
for the lecture, if you want to do the lecture somewhere else, that's fine. I think if you want to do the hands-on, you probably still want to go downstairs.
Oh, yeah.
Well, obviously, the new people will have priority in the hands-on.
You don't think we
I have
can
a
get
suggestion.
12, 15 people downstairs
Well, for what?
for
And
the lecture?
Oh, the lecture, yeah.
We've done it. We've done it.
Yeah, well, the question is, will any of the veteran election officers want to come for a refresher? And if they do, how many, and will that overload the room? That was Betty's question, I think.
Yes.
Do you have, Julie may have a thought around
I
that?
do have a suggestion around that. If that's your concern, then what you could do is we could invite them to the lecture session, have that somewhere different. And then any EOs want a refresher on hands-on, they can maybe schedule a time with us and they're not necessarily invited to the new EOs.
That's a good idea.
We did talk about office hours last time. I don't know if we really did that, but we could do office hours.
I had two people come.
Oh, you did? Okay, okay, fine. Okay, I didn't know that.
Let's try that.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. We don't need a resolution on that, I don't think.
No,
Shall we move on to the next topic, which is annual performance evaluation for registrar? Mr. Troxler, you put this on the agenda.
well, I would like to have us not wait until the last minute, and May seems a good time to do it. All we're required to do is do an annual evaluation and have the results turned in no later than August 1st, so we could actually do it.
Ms. Gibbs, you had a suggestion about using the process from the last time. Yeah, why don't you say what it is for the record?
So the annual, the performance evaluation form is given to the registrar to grade himself. And then each of us will also do the same thing. And then we'll meet in a closed session to discuss it. And then we'll invite the registrar in, present it to him after we reviewed what he said about himself.
Does that make sense to you?
Well, just one clarification. All 3 board members will each do their own evaluation. And
Individual. form.
okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I would be happy with that.
We'll share them and bring them to the meeting.
Bring them to the meeting and just work through them together to come up with a single form with the language that we want.
Will we have Dan's evaluation of himself before we do
Yes.
our? own
Yeah, I can do
evaluation?
that.
Yes.
I can do that. Yeah, that's fine.
And would we set a meeting date for that?
Yes, it would be a closed session, but we would set a meeting date.
Should we aim for the June or the July meeting?
Do we have to decide time?
I think it's actually.
Well, our June meeting is going to be the 13th. Our June meeting is going to be the week before primary.
Right.
I think I would rather,
It's in the middle of training.
yeah, do we, since it's a closed session, do we need to have it the same day as we have our open meeting, or can we have it ahead of time? I would lobby for sometime late in May.
Are we going to be?
So I would suggest we have a closed meeting for the purpose of personnel issue. Last,
You still have to publish notice.
so we've got 3 weeks before the week I'm looking at. I think
We don't have to have it done until August. I'm thinking we need to get through the June primary before we do the evaluation.
Okay, so you're looking at, let's see. Canvas has to be done by the 25th of June.
We could do it on one of the campus.
That would work. We only work 2 days. We came in on Wednesday, we came in the following Monday.
That's right.
Well, just remember, some canvas meetings are open meetings, so you want to just close it, right?
Yes, it would be a closed meeting.
You might do the provisional meeting, it's a closed meeting, or after.
Excuse me?
Provisional meeting is closed.
Right.
So you
And that would be Monday, the 24th of June.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
So we could do the evaluation on the 24th when we have a closed meeting for Canvas. Now, we would have the representatives from each party there for the provisional ballots, and they would be excused when we go to that particular topic. Okay.
Okay. Is that the schedule? Do we, I don't think we need a resolution.
I don't think so. I think we've just basically worked out what works.
Yeah. So Dan, are you comfortable with
Yeah,
that?
that's fine, yeah, that's fine, I'll get you a self-eval well before that.
Let's move on to the public comments session. Does anyone, this is the part of the meeting where we open up comments from the board. Would anyone like to say anything?
Yes, John Pastor from Bellevue. Just wanted to ask a question here, in the B and C. Maybe I missed it. You may have slipped by me here on B and C. Now, I'm going to assume the city attorney's gone ahead and reviewed both of these documents.
Great.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. Yeah, we called him the deal killer.
Yeah, no, this is. I have got to do this.
Good. Excellent. I'm pleased.
Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
I just like the fact that you're having the evaluation meeting after the election. I think that makes a lot of sense. I have to say it.
Person. Any comments? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question, in the registrar's report, using the leftover ballots from early voting for election day. My question is, of course, they'll look the same, but will the barcodes be the same?
Yes, so the ballots are
They're not coded for early voting.
correct, there's no,
No problem.
yeah, the LNA testing that we did with the FESs the other day, those ballots will be the exact same ballots that go out to the precincts as what we're doing in early voting. So We're just getting basically the same ballots enough in advance to use it in the office to do the early voting. So, now, we will have LNA testing on the other machines that are going to go out to the precincts. That's what I think, May 16th. I think we sent that. I think you may have it on invite.
Whatever the Wednesday is, I think you backed it up to the 15th. For the
Yeah, sorry, 15th. Yeah, so you should have that on your calendar actually for the LNA testing. So, but yes, same value. That would be the same test deck that we ran the other day. We'll do the same test deck.
That's right. Thank you for coming and helping us. You were quite the workhorse that day.
Very definitely.
Basically, the application, the only difference, we put whatever applications for Ward 1, Precinct 1 has an application that only reads ballots for Ward 1, Precinct 1, for each of the 18. But then the early voting and the cap machines have applications that will read all 18, but sort them out by which of the 18 they are, so that we know where they go for the sake of reporting to the state.
Any other business? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
You most certainly.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
All room is aye. Yeah, we're all. Nothing shocking. I was just figures. I can't. He's not saying anything shocking. He wanted us to know he had. 2 cents.
I mean, I
Well, he's been playing catch up.
Yes, he has. And we've been kind of racing along.
Yeah.